Hello, good people. Welcome back to the Maya Muses podcast. We have a very interesting discussion for you today. New atheism. What are we, 20 years out? We can see how this worked out. How do you think it worked out?
Bad. Well, everything seems to be working out bad.
Let's sum it up for the people. So new atheism is kind of like an evangelical atheism that hit around the turn of the century. I think in response to 9/11 and the evangelical Christians going at that. Maybe that was popularized. It popularized it.
Maybe.
Talking Christopher
I don't know.
Hitchens.
Are you calling it a new atheist movement, meaning that it is an organized, like, institution, or just a wave of atheism?
A wave of popularity of atheism. You know, when did Bill Maher's Religulous?
Religulous.
When did that come out?
Religulous?
Religulous.
Let me look.
Wow, I said that like a robot. All right, AI.
Religulous.
I remember liking that a lot. I remember at the time I was like, yeah, this makes perfect sense, man. You know, if we didn't have religion, we wouldn't be bombing buildings. There wouldn't be any war. Most wars aren't caused by religion. They're just not.
Yeah, Religulous was 2008. That's surprising.
I thought it was sooner.
Yeah, me too. I thought it was much earlier.
I thought it was 2004. Wow.
Very interesting.
Nevertheless, so that was already at the...
Yeah, because I was going to say, man, of course I went through like a religious thing.
Rejection. You were a hardcore atheist.
Well, we were Catholic.
You grew up Catholic. Your family, the Valentino
Catholic,
family.
Both sides Catholic.
Yes.
Nobody really, I guess my mother.
Here's my thing. Because I'm willing to be culturally Christian, which means you just go along with it because it works.
Right.
Like I would have followed Zeus. If this were Roman times, I'd be like, you better not say a word against Zeus and the fates because they are what's real and y'all are wrong. But it's just like culturally Christian, I think is a good way to put it.
Yeah, well... So I was doing, if you don't know about Catholicism, there are stages, right? So you have to make your confirmation. Like you have your first communion when you're young, and then you have to make your confirmation, basically saying, I confirm, I'm signing up. And I don't know if it's the same everywhere, but we had to do like confirmation school. So once a week I had to go to like church school.
What'd you learn there?
All about it.
Latin? You learned Latin?
No,
or no?
God, no. It was just very,
The Jewish kids learn the Hebrew.
I know. They're committed.
That's impressive.
Most Catholics aren't really committed. It's a thing to do on Sunday, and it's boring. Anyway, but it was like 2 years of communion school.
Wow.
And after the first year, I dropped out and I said, I don't believe this. This is all fake. And it upset everybody. And I remember my grandmother was like, listen, I did it to make my mother happy. You're going to do it to make your mother happy.
And you didn't.
And I said, no, we have to break this cycle.
What does that say about your mother? You couldn't make her happy?
She's very patient and I love her.
Yeah, she's very patient. But here's the thing, is like I was saying, like I'm culturally Christian. I see the benefits of Christianity to society.
Right.
But I can't get behind he rose on the third day.
The magic parts?
Yeah, the magic. I'm like, come on.
You buy the fish that he kind of produced a bunch of fish. That he walked on water.
No. I think he might have done that thing where he puts the stones on the water. And then he's like, look at me, I walked on water. Didn't that Mormon guy do that?
Yeah, in the story of like the birth of Mormonism, the Last Podcast guys, their Mormon series is great. And they spent a lot of time talking about other offshoots of Christianity that were happening in the upstate New York region, which was really just the edge of like West
civilization.
Yeah, the edge of like white civilization.
I'm doing a quote unquote. Yeah. You can't see.
But on those fringes is where things really start popping off because you're so far away from established institutions.
And you want to establish your own.
Yeah, so it's like tentpole preachers and stuff. And there was one guy who claimed he could walk on water, but really he just had a kid go out in the morning and put stones in certain places you couldn't see so he could stand on those.
Well, Celsus. That's what he said about Jesus. Remember did that, the most blasphemous letter ever? He was like, this guy's just doing Egyptian tricks. What are we doing? He's the Messiah? Are you kidding me? I don't know why Celsus is Jewish all of a sudden. Because he would be the opposite.
Yeah.
It's probably like he's basically was like all these gods are stupid. Like Zeus is the best. Clearly, that's why we're in charge. Why we dominate.
Yeah.
So Calcis was basically like, is it just tricks?
Yeah.
However, looking at Christianity as a religion, it does lay a good foundation for
before
society.
we get into that, because we will get into it, but like even before religious, I remember having
back to new atheism.
Yeah, back when I don't know, like now it seems so immature to focus on. Is it real? Like, of course it's not real in my mind. Right? That's not the conversation we're having. I don't think anybody thinks
it's real. Like, they're just like, whatever, yada, 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 is it real? Yeah.
But before, like, The God Delusion by Richard Dawkins, I remember reading that in high school and being like, yeah, man, this is all fucking bullshit, man.
During your goth phase
They're
or
trying
before?
to trick us, man.
Yeah, and it's
so, like that was a big thing. We all know
this, yes.
I like to think I was never, like, an insufferable, like, well, actually, like, here, let's refute your religious claims. It's such a waste of time. It's a waste of time. And when I see adults doing that, like trying to refute religious claims, I just can't take you seriously.
Yeah,
because you're arguing with people who are either they choose to believe it and there's no changing it.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to reason your way through it with them. That's not what it's about.
Yeah.
Or they know. And that's not what they're really talking about.
It's a cultural thing. It's like my whole family is Muslim, Buddhist, da-da-da-da-da. Yeah. I'm going to keep doing the holidays. Don't talk to me about it.
The one time I think, because we're drinkers. My parents and I, we drink and we talk and yell about shit. And I do remember one time feeling really bad because I felt like I shook my mother's faith a little bit, which I never meant to do.
You leave your mother alone.
I know. I never meant to do it, but we were just talking about. She had never really. A lot of my family has like intense anxiety, right? They don't like to think about too much, right? Like they like to keep it simple. What's a practical thing I could think about right now? Like my dad is the opposite. He likes to talk about crazy, psychedelic, like big.
Your dad is
stuff.
A very big thinker for having stayed in a small area as he stayed in his whole life.
He should have a podcast.
Your dad would be canceled every other week. And I would listen to his podcast.
Yeah, and he'd have a different opinion every other week.
Yeah. I'm always giving your dad history books. I was like, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? He's fantastic.
I remember talking to my mother about the scale of the universe and being like, well, it just doesn't, because she, in her Catholic upbringing and her, like, what her programming is basically that there are humans on Earth and that's it, and there's the creator and that's it. And then we were talking about something completely unrelated to religion, but I think it like cracked into her religious programming as we were talking about just the scale of how big the universe is. And I felt like I was telling her this for the first time. It was the first time she was actually like listening to it. I'm sure in school
where
and
would
stuff.
it have come up?
Yeah.
Your mom likes to drink her Miller Lights.
Mm-hmm.
And she's just likes to play Candy Crush, have a good time. Like, why are you doing this?
They like to have a good time.
Why
I think that
up?
upset her when we really talked through, like, okay, well, we have our solar system.
Yeah.
Our galaxy is made up of billions and billions and billions of other solar systems. And every time you hear somebody talk about a planet discovered wherever, that's within our galaxy.
It is.
And then there are billions and billions and billions of other galaxies outside of our galaxy. Yeah. And that really upset her. Remember, did you ever read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
I cannot stand that book.
There's a beautiful scene.
I always get to the first few chapters. I'm like, I just can't with this.
You're no fun. There's a beautiful concept within it where they don't have a death penalty anymore in this galactic empire, but they have a punishment where they put you in a machine and they give you a sense of the scale of the universe and your position in it, and it supposedly breaks your ego, and it's like giving you a spiritual lobotomy.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really good. There's so much good stuff. I know you don't like the cheeky English humor. Maybe I don't know what it is. I know you do.
I just something
That's
about
what got us together. We were both watching Peep Show.
Peep Show
constantly.
Peep Show is fantastic, and we rewatch it every year or so.
Yeah. But that I love that idea, and I feel like that's what I did to my mother when we were having that conversation.
And she just never thought about it before.
Yeah, and I think she was just like, I don't like that. Let's not talk about that. And I get it. It's like a crazy thought. You have to do a lot of psychedelics, I think, if you want to really think about that and like make peace with it.
Yeah, I don't know if you have to do psychedelics, but I had to. Other people are better than me. They don't have to.
Yeah.
I think we have opposite mothers. Because my mother just lived it. Like, whatever you do doesn't matter.
Right.
All that matters is this fleeting moment of happiness, because our life is so small in such a vast universe. And it's, we are just fleeting mortals.
Yeah.
And so she lived that. And your mother lived the exact opposite.
So
but you had a much more stable upbringing.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. At the end of the day, it makes more sense to be culturally Christian than to be like, hey, you know what? None of that shit is real.
Yeah. And that's...
Live like it's not real. Doesn't matter. Don't have kids. Don't save for the future. Who cares?
And I don't remember the God delusion too well. I read it again in high school, but I do remember there is like a full section devoted to like, let's debunk the... But he does get into the more like important conversation that is like, is this a good thing to program a society with? And that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, there's different religions. We're all getting programmed with something. The more we learn about cults, the more I've been learning about cults. I've been kind of in, on my third year of this deep dive into cults with this YouTube channel and cultish thinking and brainworms and all this shit.
It's the most important thing. We're living through like the most like cult...
Everything is.
Yeah.
It's all different levels of programming. So watching the Synanon docs, because somebody put that in the comment section.
Yes, thank you for recommending that.
And then they're like, okay, you either got Synanon and that works, or you have these heroin addicts. And Synanon is the only thing that get these people off of heroin. Right.
If you haven't seen the doc, we're only a couple episodes in. I think it's like 4 episodes.
Yeah, and we're gonna. It's like now I have a major task on my hands, but that's okay. And
but it's a cheat code to making a cult is do it in the early 70s. Number one.
Oh my God. Easy street.
It felt like people were accidentally creating.
Everyone's looking to get into a cult.
And do it around keeping people off of drugs or keeping people off of something, because you're getting people who are willing and looking to make dramatic life changes.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing. And I want to do like an MRI, because I'm wondering if the same part of the brain that has to do with addiction has to do with religion and social programming as well. Because it seems as though those people are very, very susceptible to it. But maybe it's just we have to program ourselves with something.
Right.
And it's just you choose more positive programming.
But you, in this conversation, fall in line with like what I've seen. I hate that I bring up Jordan Peterson all the time because I'm not his biggest fucking fan.
No, you don't like him. You actively don't like him.
Not a fan.
He is so serious all the time.
So serious. But
he wears a goofy suit and is like, okay, look, I am playful.
In one of his, that's what I really don't like about it. It's like, why are you being goofy? Like, your whole thing is not being goofy, but now you're wearing these dumb suits. He is for me, really represents audience capture in an interesting way.
Yes, he's definitely audience captured.
Because when we first started hearing about him, he was making noise about the
pronouns,
the pronoun
compelled
laws.
Speech. Yeah,
the idea that Canada was going to criminalize speech.
Yeah, and that's insane. And some places in the Western world are doing it because they
Turns out
they're godless people, and it has to fill a void. Anyway, we'll get back to that later.
But in one of the Rogan episodes, he was talking about religion, and it was like, it wasn't just straight up like, so do you believe, like, you're a Christian, do you believe this?
He's Catholic.
And he talked for like 30 minutes in a circle about like a bunch of just, you know how he does like his the whale and the
Jonah and the
hero's
whale
journey and we need to blah 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 blah. But really what he said in about 30 minutes, when he could have just said like, no, I don't believe this is literally true. However, I do believe in the morals that it imparts upon society, and we are not prepared as a species to exist without some kind of moral code transmitted through this.
Yeah, and he said to, I think, Sam Harris one time, and Sam Harris was like, you really believe that he got up after 3 days? Because that's where the crux of the
Right.
Christianity was. You got to say he got up after 3 days. If you say no, you're like, no, you're not a Christian. Anyway, so he was like, do you really believe he got up after 3 days? And Jordan Peterson was like, I act as if I do. And people ragged on him for that. But then Brett Weinstein went up to him and basically said, that's the right answer. Because you can't.
Right.
You believe that?
Yeah.
Come on. There's a cutoff limit of, I guess, your bullshit factor. Because some people can be brilliant, but be able to bullshit themselves to like the highest degree.
Right.
And I admire this because this is probably people like the same trait that allowed those martyrs to be skinned alive and not feel it.
Productive self-delusion.
Yeah. And some women are like, birth was just fantastic. I just got in this place. I cannot delude myself to that degree.
Yeah.
Like I can't. Like if something is true, it is true. And if it's
Right.
false, it's false. And there's like a physical reaction to that. But anyway. Oh, where is it? Oh yeah. So the believing that he actually got up on the third day, like you have to either be a little dumb or you have to be able to delude yourself to the point of like, yeah, one magic thing happened one time.
No, because there was one magic man one time.
There was a magic man
Because
one
he
time.
did a bunch of magic stuff.
Well, what about the ark and stuff? Because in the Old Testament, God's always coming down and intervening.
Yeah, that's true.
God's very active in the Old Testament, and he's always like, my children of Israel, you were screwing up, so I'm going to punish you, but only for a generation. Then I'm going to, turn things upside down to get you back. So Moses was super magic. Mm-hmm. Moses is always doing magic.
That's true. Oh, man, that Noah movie. All kinds of magic in that Noah movie.
There's magic in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, and the last magic thing that ever happened, he got up on the third day. And that's it. And then the magic went away forever.
Right.
And it's like, I don't know. Oh.
Well, obviously not. But again, that's not really what the
But
conversation
there are plenty of Christians who are just like, the conversation, what Peterson was saying was basically like, I act as if I do. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I can go there.
No, and like, I don't want to call people who do think they believe that dumb. I don't want to be disrespectful.
But they're deluding themselves in some way.
Yeah.
They have cut off a way of thinking, and he's right. We act as if we do, even if we don't.
But the question is this good for society? Is this loss of the Christian religion specifically
Yeah.
in America good or bad?
Yeah, because I'm going to defend the Christian religion here.
Before we do, though, we should talk about, so we know a person who is like very educated in Christian studies or whatever, and we stumped her that time, remember? Because, okay, my theory is that and this is based on just very little. Like,
Yeah, you just threw this together
I put this together.
on a cocktail napkin.
Yeah, like a logic problem.
Yeah.
It feels to me like the Roman Empire adopted Christianity to essentially pacify the people as the empire was entering a stage of,
Decline.
diminishing returns
Yeah.
for its citizens. And I think the timing of the adoption of Christianity makes a lot of sense because you're basically telling the people, like, your gods you've been praying to are very practical. I pray, I get something. Transactional. You have transactional gods. That was all wrong. We've got this new thing where you're going to suffer. Like, this life is suffering, but that's good because after you get rewarded. So calm down about everything. It makes perfect sense to me that adoption was purposefully done to pacify people.
See, that's interesting because in the decline and fall of the Roman Empire, Gibbons makes the case that it was Christianity that brought down Rome. Mm-hmm. It wasn't that way. It was the other way. Mm-hmm. It was the adoption of Christianity that made them weak.
Maybe, I don't know.
Because the old gods are strong. Zeus is strong. Zeus is powerful.
Well, a lot of people make that, and a lot of people on Twitter in certain circles make that fall of the Roman Empire comes from the
the ancient woke, the woke of their time.
Yeah, you stop conquering and you start accepting other people's ways into your spaces, and that's bad.
Oh, that's from anti-immigration stuff. Mm-hmm. Which, I mean, there's something to that, but there's also to that you just become weak.
Right.
And the meek shall inherit the earth is not a very good. It's not a very good slogan for a powerful thing. That's
but
threatened.
if you think about it, when would you say, oh God, you can't actually answer this question probably, but what would you say is like around what century did Rome start to sort of like really falter and be like, well, they ran out of stuff to conquer for one thing.
Oh, and then they had to maintain their borders.
And they stagnate and then.
Okay, so I'm going to say, the end, the late, I want to say like 400, around the year 400.
Mm-hmm. And when was Christianity adopted?
Right before that. But it was a thriving religion prior to that. So it was coming up. And it was also, they took over the Jewish people in Israel, in Palestine. It was they called it Palestine at the time, but that basically meant the Jewish people and the Jewish religion. And the Jewish religion is it's a decent religion, but the problem is there's too many rules. Like, so this guy Paul Johnson, who is Piers Morgan's father-in-law. He's a British historian, and he makes the argument like a Jewish religion was bound to pop off. They had a lot of different sects that were going at each other because Judaism is too rigid. It's not really applicable. Whereas Christianity is like, eat what you want.
Yeah,
just this really like Cliff Notes kind of religion. You need the red letter New Testament.
Okay.
And then that's about it. And then you think like we're like, oh, Catholicism, they kept that secret that was in Latin, We're thinking of medieval times. Like back in the day, everyone spoke Latin. So Christianity was easy.
So we could spend probably hours and hours and weeks talking about early Christianity, and we would have to learn a lot more.
Yeah.
You can't ever learn enough because then everybody's gonna be like, oh, you learned that? That's all wrong. You got to learn all this.
Yeah.
And that's impossible. But what do you think it is about Christianity that makes it uniquely good for a society?
Okay. So you have basically render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, which means let the government do its thing. Like back off, let the government act in the way that it's got to act, pay your taxes, and just be a good person.
Yeah.
So there's that. That's it. That's important. And then there's the forgiveness. You're forgiven for your sins, anything that you've done, and people have done some wretched things, especially if you're going to go back in the day. Like people have done terrible things. You're forgiven for that, and because that's all you can do. You can't go back in time and change anything. All you can do is move forward into the future and try to change starting today. That's a fantastic way to think about things. And also, judge not lest you be judged. So you can't cast that stone. And they used to do it all the time. And there are places in the world they still cast stones. They stone people and they judge them.
Well, yeah, you give Catholicism, not
Catholics.
just Christianity, a lot of credit for stopping like human sacrifices and stuff.
Yeah, well, Catholicism and also I guess the British. The British also, as they expanded their empire, for all the terrible things you say about it, they're like, yeah, we're not doing this anymore. So it was a civilizing force. The Christian world has been a civilizing force over the world. So it sucks. It hasn't been all perfect, but it's probably been, and this is how you have to look at things. If you look at stats, if you flip a coin and it's 60%, over like 1,000 flips, 60% heads and 40% tails, that's something wrong with that coin. It should be 50-50. Well, the same thing actually works for things in the real world, in these scenarios in the real world. It's like if it's positive 60% of the time and negative 40% of the time, then that's actually a good thing.
I guess when I look at like Northern European cultures and stuff, it makes me sad how Christianity sort of homogenized the world. Like it was a homogenizing force before like American capitalism.
Yeah, well, it was by force. It was by force. In Europe, you see people being forced into Christianity.
Yeah,
threat of death,
like, brutally. Yeah,
and that's the way Islam spread as well.
Yeah,
it's like you will convert.
Yeah, well, that's obvious. Outside of that, like obviously, horrible things happen in that respect.
I mean, and that's pretty primal.
Yeah,
like that's horrible.
But homogenizing the world, meaning like adapting to. Like when you spread a religion, you also spread like the culture of the spreader, right?
Well, yeah, and that's interesting because the Catholic Church, when it spread, it also spread its bureaucracy. Mm-hmm. And this is also with the British. When they spread its bureaucracy. So it's like a way, not what you put in the pathways, but it's a way to dig pathways, mental pathways and organizational pathways. And that is even more important than what goes in it. Bureaucracy, the nature of bureaucracy. Yeah.
And is that good or bad?
It's annoying. It's fucking annoying. Bureaucracy is annoying, but it's very efficient.
Right.
Until you get to the point where you reach the limits of bureaucracy. I wonder if that's where we are right now. We're reaching the limits of bureaucracy. It's just mucking up the system too much.
Mm-hmm. Well, remind me, because in Sapiens, I feel like he does a good job talking about what usefulness religion had in that. And it goes beyond religion, but it just basically starts with like, okay, you are going to have loyalty to your direct family. You are going to have loyalty to your tribe. As the world expands, you have loyalty to people who look like you, right? And how do you break out of that is you unite people who don't necessarily look like you around another thing. So now you can unite people who look different under religion, and that becomes as important as the other thing. And then after religion comes like essentially capitalism, right?
Well, that's like every man for himself, but yeah. And we see like Christianity that supposedly ended slavery a long, long time ago because you couldn't enslave another Christian. Mm-hmm. But then they did what only can be described as some sort of satanic twist to allow them to enslave Africans, because that is against the religion. Right. Once they converted, they should have been immediately freed. Right. And the fact that didn't happen, it's hard to call these people Christian. Mm-hmm. There's some kind of, and well, this is another problem. I should finish my sentences, but this is another problem is when you try to link tribalism to Christianity, and you get like this white nationalism or even black nationalism. But you're saying that God loves your group more, but no, God loves you all the same if you accept Christ. Yeah, those are the rules.
That's where we're heading. It's like, yeah, in theory, these are all the things that Christianity is supposed to be doing. But is it, and is it better to be done with it? But the last thing I want to say about the homogenizing thing is like, it's sad to see the whole world, and I see it because I've traveled internationally a lot, and after a while, like, I've been to Cambodia 3 times, and I went and I spaced it out enough that I saw Phnom Penh, the capital, grow so crazy fast. Like the first time I went there, I felt like I was in a different country. Like I felt like, okay, this feels like a developing country. It feels very different. You can feel the culture here, right? And the last time I went, it felt so much closer to what has become of like a lot of Thailand and places where it's like, it's McDonald's, it's American style road systems. It's like everything just starts to feel the same.
Well, it's also bureaucracy. Now we have an example of, when we talk about the early Catholic Church, the early bureaucracy, now we have supercharged it. Mm-hmm. So now our corporations have taken over this idea. Right. And are now able to spread faster.
And the argument there is like, well, isn't this making the lives of the people there better? And without getting too philosophical, which you hate, that's a different conversation. But like, it would be interesting to see how things would develop without the influence of American capitalism. Right now, back then, it would have been interesting to see how societies and peoples would have developed without the influence of the Catholic Church.
Yeah, I'm honestly going to say that Christianity, in at least its reform sense, and the Catholic Church had to reform after everyone else got reformed, regardless, is basically like, yeah, don't kill and eat your neighbors. Mm-hmm. Like, don't kill. That's a major thing. We don't have that automatic programming. Humans don't have that automatic programming to not kill your neighbors.
But you would think that it would develop eventually.
Why?
Because it did.
No, it didn't. A lot of these people...
But it did with Christianity.
It did with Christianity, but then when you look at the tribes that they conquered,
we're talking mainly about like Germanic, Northern European, that kind of stuff. Because obviously China developed without Catholicism or Christianity.
Yeah, they're not very nice to their people. They're not very nice to the individual people. They don't have a high value of the individual Chinese life. It can be sacrificed to the collective. Whereas,
but then that's what Christianity in Europe became during the Inquisition. Like,
Yeah, the Inquisition
it's all
was a
very
problem.
similar stuff.
No, the Inquisition going after heretics for speaking out, and China saying that. What is this? The Art of War? Is it the beginning of the Art of War, where the Lao Tzu goes to the emperor? I think it's Lao Tzu. Shit, it's on my bedside table. Anyway, I'm just piecing this together because I didn't think I have to talk about it. Anyway, so he goes to the emperor and he's like, yo, get your concubines to line up properly. And emperor can't get his concubines. These bitches, fucking goofy.
These bitches, bro.
Yeah,
They're
so...
just wandering off.
Yeah, like, where'd you find them? Anyway, so Lao Tzu's like, oh, I'll get your concubines to line up. Can I do whatever I want? Emperor's like, sure. And he's like, where's your head concubine? And he points to the head concubine, cuts off her head. And then the rest of them line up immediately. That's evil. By any Christian measurement, that's evil. She hadn't done anything wrong. Mm-hmm. Even by
she should have had the other concubines in check.
Bitches should have listened.
It's like herding cats with these concubines.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Like, we can't be like, oh, they have civilization, and they do have civilization. But to say that it is good for the people or that it is a kind civilization, just because you can have civilization under the worst circumstances or the cruelest circumstances. We assume because what we have seen is a Christian civilization that is what all civilizations are. It's just not true.
So now...
Oh, I had a period of new atheism too, and as a reaction to my time in Pakistan and how all those people were so religious and like backward in my mind at the time. I was an asshole. I was like a young teenage asshole, like in the asshole years of teenagery before you realize, like, whatever, people are just trying,
Right, and you were there at a very interesting age.
Interesting, yeah. No, that was my age and an interesting time. It was over 9/11, and then I came back and people were super doubling down as a reactionary way into Christianity, like worshiping President Bush like he was the second coming or whatever. And I was just like, you know what, this is all stupid. But I see now that was all just a reactionary take. And I see it because we tried the atheism thing in society and it has failed miserably. It has failed miserably.
Why?
People don't know if you're a boy or a girl. And they don't know what a boy or a girl is or if it matters. Like, this generation that's grown up full atheists are depressed, confused, highly suicidal.
Yeah, I think what people expected, what I would have expected.
You thought there'd be flying cars when we gave up religion.
Well, yeah, I figured we would unite around, you have to unite around something, right? So I figured what would be left to unite around if we were an advanced civilization.
Which we're not.
And we decide, okay, these childish things should go away because they are tied to so many other destructive things, right?
Yeah.
It's so easy to twist these things and confuse people and whatever, right? You'd think that what would be left would be like reason and not, quote, the science, TM, but science, like reason, observable phenomenon and all that. But it seems like whatever we are left with now is the opposite.
Yeah, it's superstitious because The Secret hit around then too, which is just witchcraft and magic. It's occult stuff. The Secret. We all believed in it, and a lot of people still believe in it, and it's fine if you believe in it because there might be truth in it. This isn't
like metaphysical New Age stuff. You think we abandon Christianity and what we consider now to be atheism is really an amalgamation of New Age nonsense?
This I'm spiritual but not religious is a New Age amalgamation. I'm not going to call it nonsense. But it is what it is. The New Age is really tricky. I went into this in Why I Left My Church video is because if you don't have a doctrine, you'll just kind of float toward positivity, and positivity will somehow go back to what's best for you.
Right.
No matter what's best for you. This is like my problem with the prosperity gospel and other stuff. It's like, that's not really religion. That's technically witchcraft.
Yeah.
Like technically.
What do we call it? I'm blanking on it. This boy kept us up. What do you call it? Toxic positivity.
Toxic positivity, yes. Yeah. So that's New Age, and you don't have God, you have the universe, and there's stuff to it. I'm not getting on it. Like, I'm all about it.
We've done enough DMT to know that there's something going on.
Yeah, there's something going on. And so you have that, but what you also have is we would think that okay, we can all go into reason, and whoever believes in science and reason then is our brother.
Right.
But it just has, we've descended into tribalism.